everybody, and welcome back to the Star Wars Expanded Universe, narrated by Disney or current Lucasfilm, whichever way you slice it. Legends. Today I only have comics for you. Today we are only talking about the Rebellion comics. I mean, there's a lot of stories set in the Rebellion era, but these are called Rebellion. These only lasted 16 issues, so I imagine they weren't very popular and they kind of died off. But it's basically Star Wars Empire 2.0 because we have a lot of the same characters from Empire. There's stories that are continued from Empire, so it's basically just the Empire Comics 2.0. So that's basically what that's all about. But Rebellion issues 0 to 5 basically continues the story that the end of Empire kind of talked about with Tank, Luke's old friend from Tatooine, and the struggle dealing with all of that. I think these 5 issues were the best of this entire comic series. Of course, that's, kind of cheating because it's banking off another storyline from another comic series. But these 5 issues I thought were really good. We have a lot of returning characters. We have Abel, who is the clone trooper that Luke found in an earlier issue in Empire. There's the dude with the cool, tattoo around his head who's bald. Dina returns. I mean, freaking heck, I thought Dina was this one-off character, right? But she has a pretty big arc too in this series. Dina is this girl that looks weirdly a lot like Luke, but a girl, and she's just she loves the original characters like we do, but she's actually, it's like, imagine that you got to be in Star Wars. You probably wouldn't be this big action hero. You just probably wouldn't be, if we're being honest. You're probably not a Jedi. You're probably an everyday Joe. And that's kind of what Dina is. She's kind of just there in the background. And she's like, man, these guys are really cool. Like, imagine that you have these 3 friends that are really tight together, and you're kind of there. It's kind of her, but she returns, so that's interesting. She even tries to make out with Luke at some point in a drunken stupor. But sexual stuff never happens in Star Wars. For the quality autisms out there, the Novas, Troy Denning, he's such a sexual man. He puts sexual stuff in all of his books. The bug sex. I am German. That's Noah. But anyway, here's an example of something, mildly sexual. And it's not by Troy Denning. I don't know. It seems like his points kind of fall flat the more the EU you read. Oh, I just like having fun with him. Quality Autism, quality channel. You should go subscribe. Anyway, back to the point. Everything concludes with Tank, and I thought everything with that was really good. I love Tank's struggle because, and that was one of the greatest things. I didn't realize that's who it was earlier on in the Empire comics. So when I had the revelation, oh, that's Tank, because I remember Matt talking about it. So I thought we were going to get introduced to a new character named Tank in the Empire, but it was the same dude that I'd already been reading about. So that actually got me. But I love his struggle because he's like Gilead Pelion, where he's really firm in his beliefs that the Empire is the right thing, but at the same time, he has this internal struggle because Luke Skywalker is his childhood friend. And so everything with that was done really, really well, and I loved so much about that. And so those 5 issues were absolute bangers, and I highly, highly recommend them. Boba Fett one-shot. Overkill. It's okay. It's a one-shot comic. I don't really dig the art. It's really cartoony, but it's not bad art. Because I'm not an artist, right? So I can't really critique art. I will say it's written, it's drawn well from my vague understanding of how art works. I'm just saying aesthetically, personally, for me, it doesn't look very good. Whereas that comic with Han and Lando, the Underworld or whatever, I think that's legitimately bad art. I don't care who you are. I don't care if you're the greatest artist ever or whatnot, I think you could look at that and just say that's bad art. But this one is more subjective. Like I can tell that it's good in the sense that there's nothing really wrong with it. I just don't dig it. Um, but basically, this Imperial officer is doing this big like Game of Thrones like scheme upon scheme, trying to get this. I'm trying to be as vague as possible because it's a one shot comic. It's only like 24 pages long, and he's trying to do this thing, and he hires Boba Fett to do it. Da da da. By the end, Boba Fett, of course, succeeds because he got paid. He does the job, but Boba Fett at the end, I'll say, is like, I would have just gone for the money. He's like, why not? Power is the most important thing in the world. Now I'm going to move up in the Empire. And he goes, yeah, you are. And you're going to make a lot of people angry. And I bet, eventually, someone's going to pay me to visit you. Have fun with your new position. Pretty decent. Moving on, we have Rebellion, issues 6 to 10. I want to commend it for being something different. You basically have no returning characters in this 4 issues. The only character who is recognizable is Darth Vader. There's not a single person in this comic that you know about. Right? Like, there's no Luke, there's no Leia, there's no Han. Now, I don't want to be like one of those fans who's like, oh, no Han and Leia, then I don't want to read about it. Because I read that issue in the Marvel comics, the old Marvel comics, where we had Jax and all those other characters, and I enjoyed those issues. I just find this 4 issues rather bland. I don't mind it. I don't think it's written badly. At all. I think the art's nice. I don't care. Like, we have this new guy. He's pretty cool. I like his design and everything. He's a black guy. So Star Wars was diverse. And he's like, he works for this criminal guy, not Jabba the Hutt, but another dude who's apparently super powerful, but we never really heard about him before. And he's underneath the criminal's nose. He's been supplying intel to the Rebel Alliance. His boss finds out, and he gets a bomb implanted in his head. And he's told, okay, go ahead, go help the rebels, but you're really working for me, and if you try to disobey me, you're going to get your head blown off. And so it causes like this whole thing. There's this chick, I don't remember her name, I didn't write it down, she's fine. There's this literal dog alien. He was fine. He wasn't anything spectacular. He was no Griff. He was, no dinosaur guy from the Dark Times comics. He was fine. Bone Dark. Trying to remember the dinosaur's name. It's been a bit. The dinosaur one, you know what I'm talking about. But he was fine. There's this guy that's not force sensitive, but he has a lightsaber, and he does stuff with it. There's this twist with this one character who turns out to be like a dark Jedi. I didn't care. So that's the thing. Like, it's written fine. Like, the story, there's nothing inherently wrong with the story itself that I could really see. I tried to care about what was going on, but I just don't. I don't feel anything for these new characters. It is not because they're not Han, Luke, and Leia. I can get behind new characters, and again, I admire this series for trying to do something else besides, the main characters. I appreciate that. I just don't feel they stuck the landing with making me feel or care about these people. Like, I just don't care, I guess. And I'm just kind of being a broken record right now. But yeah, this might have been, I don't know, this might have been what started to kill off the sales of this. And I don't even know if that's the case. As I said, I'm just speculating on why it's only 16 issues, because Empire was 40, Legacy is 50, the KOTOR comics are 50, the Republic comics are 80, and the old Marvel comics go up to 100. So I'm just trying to figure out why Rebellion is only 16. And I think it's in large part due to these issues. I think it just kind of killed off the series. I don't know. Um, but it is a decent little read. If you want something different, maybe check it out just to see some other characters besides the main trio. But that being said, for me personally, it didn't really stick the landing. Moving on, we have Rebellion issues 11 to 14. So this one we really focus on Dina, who's kind of the everyman of the series, because she's just like this everyday Joe, right? She's not special. She doesn't really have any particular talents. She's just kind of there, which is why I was surprised that she kept coming back. Now, unlike the other one, this one is still a new character in the sense it's not somebody from the movies, but I felt more for her. Not like a lot, but I did empathize with the fact that she wants to do something important like Han, Luke, and Leia do, but she's just a normal person. And so the rebels, they're still dealing with the losses of everything that happened in the first 5 issues. And they find this Banister Station. Now, this is brought up as like a big deal. I know in the grand scheme it isn't, but I get what they're doing, because obviously the next big thing can't happen till the movies. That's kind of the hindrance of this era, is because you're so dependent. Whereas like with the prequels, you had the Clone Wars, right? The Clone Wars come to an end during episode 3. So you have a lot of interesting things you could kind of do with that. And I mean, I guess this is a war too, but there's so many characters that are introduced in the prequels that don't get much character. So you could build upon that and make such wonderful, Quinlan Voss, Ayla Secura, Mace Windu, all this stuff. You can do more with that. You're more open and free to be creative and make stuff with those characters, because there's not much said about them as long as they're in the next movie. And if they're not in the next movie, you can explain why they're not, which is kind of rad. With the OT movies, the main characters are mainly just Han, Luke, and Leia. So you can't really expand upon their characters too much, because that's what the movies are going to do. So you're kind of limited in your capacity for what you're allowed to do and not do. That being said, Dina, new character, I really enjoyed her, trying to be like, yeah, I'm an everyman, but I want to be something more. And the heroes, the main heroes, they kind of get stuck doing stuff. So Dina has to be the one to step up and do something. And I thought that was really cool. So I did, but basically with their plan for this 4 issues is that there's this Banister Station. A Banister Station, it's not super big or anything, but it is a big refueling spot for the ships of the Empire. So if they can destroy that, if they can get rid of that, then they've basically, I mean, it's not going to destroy the entire empire, but it is going to hinder them quite a bit, at least in that sector of space, and provides them more freedom in that sector of space, because you're going to see less Imperials coming out that way if they know they can't refuel. Which is that's a pretty big deal. Even if it's not like, winning the entire war, that's still a big deal. So I did enjoy that. Lastly, we have issues 15 to 16. This is the 3rd part of the Vector crossover storyline. Basically, all these comic books were coming out around the same time, and they just decided to do a small crossover only within Star Wars, not, comic small crossovers like Spider-Man meets Batman, or, Wolverine, I don't know, whatever. Think about those, but this was only contained within their universe. So Celeste Morn, and we talked about this like a year ago at this point, but 4,000 years ago during the Mandalorian Wars, before Revan and everything, Celeste Morn met Zane Garrick, the main character of the KOTOR comics, and she found this, even for the time, ancient, Sith artifact. And it attaches to her, and there's this ancient evil Sith, probably one of the OG Sith, that's, whispering around in her head. And there's no way to get it off. There's no way to stop this evil, so she goes into cryosleep. Zane said he'd find a way to help her, but Zane never did, because 4,000 years later, when she finally awakens, who shows up but Darth Vader? thinking that he might want the amulet for himself to gain even more power and overthrow the Emperor, until he realizes, of course, that no, I'll just become a slave to this dude too, and I'm sick of being a slave to anyone. So, by by the end of that arc, she's stranded on a moon, left to herself, with just herself and the evil Sith in her mind. Jump over 20 years later, we get to this series where Vader knows that she's still there, and I guess because comic book demands it, he uses the same guy, because the guy from issues 6 to 10 doesn't die. He's forced to work for Vader, but I don't think we ever hear about him again after these comics. So I guess he dies after this. I don't know, but so with our heroes, the rebellion, they head over to this planet, or they head over to this moon, and they find all these ragghouls. You would know the ragghouls if you've read the KOTOR comics or if you've played the Knights of the Old Republic video game, because they're in the undercity of Terrace. But the ragghouls are like this Sith-made thing. And so Abel, who was the clone trooper that we've met earlier on in the Empire comics, meets his demise here. And I guess I never really fathomed it until this point, but Celeste Morn has lived such a tragic and awful life. Like, she's just imprisoned by this thing. She feels she has the strength to control it to an extent, enough to have it not ruin the galaxy. But it basically makes her life be just like, I have to imprison this thing forever because no one else can handle it. And there could be people stronger than me that would take it and destroy everything. So I just got to keep it with me. And she just can't die, find peace. She just has to exist like this. And I feel so bad for Celeste in this. But she fights Luke, and rightfully so. Luke loses pretty badly because he's not a fully trained Jedi at all, so he doesn't really hold his own, which was good and consistent. And Carnus Moore's like, you know what I will do? I shall take over Luke, and then I shall rule the galaxy and kill Emperor Palpatine and Vader. However, Leia jumps in the way, so he's like, oh, wait, whatever, fine, I'll try to take over her then, too. Or instead. But Celeste stops it. She's like, no, this is my burden to carry. Tells Luke and everybody to go away. And then she takes a ship, puts it out in space, and we will not see her again for another 140 years until Cade Skywalker will meet her and finally end the story of Celeste Moore. That's pretty much it, guys. Having read most of these comics now, if I was doing it just on the Dark Horse comics, I would think it would go KOTOR, Legacy, the Republic comics, the Empire comics, and then Rebellion. I think that's how I would go about it. So I think that's my ranking for these so far. Dark Empire and stuff that's a different, for me it's a different category because they're not really like a series. They're just like one 5-issue or whatever series. So I think that's different. If we're just doing comics overall, those would probably be placed higher than any of those. But as for long-running series, that's how I'd probably do it. But up next, guys, we got a bit. We got short stories, got some comics, and we head ever closer to actually being officially a year after episode 4. Yeah, get this. Literally everything I've talked to you about for months and months and months since Tales from Mos Eisley, which I basically skipped over episode 4 because, it's episode 4. So I briefly touched upon it. But basically, since then, everything I've talked about has been within the same year as the movie. It's been 0. As in, like, the Death Star blew up, and we're in that year still. We're moving into 1 year after episode 4 really soon, which is crazy because as Matt Wilkins and everyone else has talked about, Luke, Leia, and Han don't get time to breathe or go to the bathroom in this era of Star Wars. But anyway, guys, thank you all so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up. Sharing helps out a ton, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye.